Hey everyone, this is Car Ray Rob, where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob, and we want to welcome you to a brand new episode of Say Hello to My Little Film.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film.
That's right, everyone. We are back with a brand new episode of Say Hello to My Little Film. But before we get started, Ray, why don't you tell everybody at home what it is we do here?
I'd be happy to on Say Hello. Typically what happens is I'm going to pick a movie that I love, or vice versa. I'm going to show it to you, and it's a movie you've never seen, and I'm going to see if I can get you to love this movie as much as I do.
That's right. We call that our fresh perspective on a retrospective review, and it is your turn, Ray.
It is my turn, and I've been on a roll.
You have been on a roll.
I've been showing you some classic
You've been on a
movies that you have
big
responded
roll.
well to.
Yeah,
That is a lot of pressure.
it is. You got
to
to keep it
going.
going. Or you go in the opposite direction. You bring
True.
me something that I'm going to definitely hate.
But this is your birthday month, so I
That's
really
true.
don't want to just absolutely hammer
Why
you.
not? No,
I
okay,
don't know. I
that's
really have
fine.
no really good reason to. But I am going to pick a movie that I think is really good. It's a bit of a war movie.
Oh,
so
well, you have a tendency to go that route sometimes.
I love war.
Westerns and war, the two W's.
True. But I've spent my last couple of movies I showed you have been pretty old. I think like 1958, 1960. So I'm going to bump us up to 2006.
Okay.
Got a little more recent here. Just try to change up the time. But it's a period piece from the early 19th century. I'm bad with centuries.
20th century?
18th century is
What
the
year did it take
20th
place?
century. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it took
year
place in like 1920.
Yeah, 20th century.
20th century. Yeah. All right. So you got
Not
to
that
add
long
one.
ago. Don't age it too bad.
You have to add one. Yeah. Okay. Add one number. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so it's a recent movie, but it's about a time even further ago than what I've been working with. So,
Okay. Well, fair enough. And as you've said, you're on a big roll right now, so there's really
Yeah.
no reason for me to worry or wonder. But I've got to wonder though. I got to
Don't
because
worry, though.
I'm not going to worry. I'm going to wonder. So before we keep going, Ray, I got to know, what do you got?
What do you got? What do you got? What do you got?
All right, Rob. What I got for you is 2026,
2026?
2006.
There we go. We were terrible with years today.
Inherit the wind that shakes the barley.
What?
No, just the wind that shakes the barley. I'm going back to back with wind in my title.
You are, that's true. You are.
Which is
So wind
weird.
is actually in the title.
Yes, it's the wind that shakes the
Wind
barley.
that shakes
2006,
the barley.
starring
Okay.
Cillian Murphy,
Oh, I do
the
love
great
Cillian
Cillian Murphy, Pádraic Delaney, Liam Cunningham, Uriah Fitzgerald. These are all other co-stars of this movie. They're all really great. It's like I mentioned, it takes place in 1920. It's during the Irish battle for independence.
Okay.
Also kind of turns into the Irish Civil War.
Sure.
As that
As it does.
yeah, war can be messy, and that kind of is what this movie is about. It's really, it is about, the heroes of war and the monsters of war are not all that far apart. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that
Old chestnut.
yes. So it's very interesting. It's told from the pretty much primarily the Irish perspective of it. It's almost like, I think if you were a history nut, you might call this movie a bit biased.
Oh,
But it is what it is. It's telling a story about this family, more or less. They were part of this war, and it's really interesting. There's Cillian Murphy and Pádraic Delaney play brothers,
Mhm.
and so they're kind of in this, I don't know, like revolutionists. Like, it wasn't like, this is not trench warfare. This is like they're trying to get the English out of Ireland. So it's a
Sure.
lot of like, it's a
the
lot of
IRA, man.
yeah. It's
Retirement funds all around.
Exactly.
Just kidding.
Exactly. So, but it's interesting too. The cinematography is really great because it's held in these beautiful rolling hills, like it's the stuff you always see when you see like Northern England, but
Yeah.
now a little war happening in those environments. And I
That's
think that
interesting.
contrast
Yeah.
is definitely definitely on purpose there. It's got some scenes that are really tough to watch. I think if you're going to do a war movie justice, you do have to show the brutality
Sure.
in it as well, and you need those emotional moments to hit. And I think this movie has that in spades. I will say I know when I first saw this movie, if they are not going to hold your hand with the Irish history either. Like if you don't really
You don't know,
you don't know. You can just follow along. It doesn't make that big of a difference. It might be helpful a little bit, but you catch on quick on like when the tides are turning and what's kind of going on.
Yeah.
But it's a great ride. Cillian Murphy's great. I think this is not a movie he's really well known for.
Yeah, I can't say I've heard of it before. I mean, maybe I've heard about it in passing, but I don't remember it if I have.
But he is great in it. He's great in everything. So,
that's true.
So I think you'll really enjoy his performance, and I think and hope you're gonna love the tale of these brothers as they kind of navigate this.
That sounds awesome. I feel like Ireland, Northern Ireland especially, is like having a moment right now. There's like so much stuff coming out from that area, whether it's How to Get to Heaven from Belfast or Dairy Girls or all there's various movies and shows. I think the one, or that was Scotland, the one that docu-series I told you about recently about how Should I Marry a Murderer or whatever. It seems like that whole part of the world is just kind of having a moment right now, so it's great to kind of visit that again and see a little bit of the history of it, which I think is great. And like you said, Cillian Murphy is awesome, so I'm very excited to watch that movie, and that is what we are going to do right now.
Absolutely.
We are going to go watch Inherit the Wind of the what?
It's close enough. The Wind That Shakes the Barley.
The Wind That Shakes the Barley. Now you've got me all messed up.
Yeah.
Now I don't know. Now, The Wind That Shakes the Barley. We're going to go watch that, and we invite you to do the same. Pause the podcast, go check that movie out, and come back and see if I love this movie as much as Ray does.
Ray and Rob are currently watching the film. You may be also watching the film. If you're not, then you're listening to me say that Ray and Rob are watching the film. They'll be right back when they're done watching the film.
All right, we are back from watching The Wind That Shakes the Barley.
No.
I just slipped into it.
We're not Lucky Charmsing this stuff.
It'll be
inappropriate.
It'll be like Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future 3.
Oh my!
That's a bad Irish.
That's a
bad
Irish accent. No, I agree with that 100%. It's just like, man, I just watched the Lucky Charms commercial and I just did that.
We're gonna refrain from that. We're gonna use our regular voices. No accents here. Although the accents in this movie, they're a lot.
Oh yeah, they're a lot.
They're legit.
Yeah.
Like I have seen this movie multiple times and prefer subtitles for sure every time I watch it.
Yeah, no, anything like this, and it's funny because I feel like there's a lot of Northern Ireland shows out. I've talked about multiple. I've talked about Dairy Girls, and I've talked about How to Get to Heaven from Belfast. They're all the same in that regard, though. You have to have the subtitles because the slang that they use, their accents. You have to have the subtitles. But it's a beautiful. I know it might not seem beautiful to some people the way they speak, but I actually think it's really awesome. But it is hard because I'm not used to hearing it every day. So it's like that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
When they're slipping into Gaelic, and I'm like, this could be English, this could be Gaelic. I'm not sure. It all sounds like a bunch of mixed words to me. But either way, beautiful language, beautiful setting. I still feel that. I think I mentioned before section. I love how this movie looks and how it kind of depicts war in a way that's different.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely accurate because for a war movie, and this is a war movie, I would say, it doesn't feel like a war movie because of the type of warfare, number one, because that's also a big part of it, and we'll get into that. But also, like you said, the locations and the settings. It doesn't feel like this is a battlefield. You know what I mean? It's not that. It's the the Irish countryside, the rolling hills, the forests and things like that.
It's not trench warfare. It's not shot in a trench full of mud and guys are dirty and sleeping in holes.
No.
This is, like I said, this is fought in the countryside. It's a beautiful countryside that they're blending into, and you really don't see blood and guts because it's like buried into the high grass. It's like even at the end of the war, it's like, there's a guy here, he's dead, he's in here, but they don't focus on it. It's almost just like war can be anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, no, 100%. So I know a lot of times we have a question.
We try
to have a question, not every time, but sometimes we try to kind of shape a conversation around a question, and I think I have one
Ooh.
that I think could be kind of interesting for this. And so, obviously, Damien being the main character, we see a lot of this movie through his point of view.
Sure.
I think more than any other character, even though Teddy is, you can call him a co-star, if you will. Like, there are two opposing views by the end of the movie, and it's Teddy and Damien. But Damien is really the point of view you're getting, and I think his arc is interesting, and I think a lot of it stems from really a couple of lines that he kind of delivers early on, and that is the idea that he sees himself as a man of words, where he saw his brother Teddy as a man of action.
Right.
And that kind of, by the end of the movie, it just really had my mind reeling, about how, people see each other. And I think the question that I would really like to pose to ourselves as we're talking about this is that true? Like, is his
Interesting.
his account of himself and of his brother accurate?
Yeah, I think that is. We can track that throughout our conversation, because I do think that's something you need to track with Damien. You need to be aware of that as you're kind of watching him go through this movie.
Yeah.
And I think Cillian Murphy's great doing it.
Yeah.
Every time you watch Cillian Murphy in a movie, I'm like, nobody else could have done this role but him.
Yeah.
I certainly feel that way here. Well, so let's start off thinking about that, like right from the bat. So because Damien is a man of words, or at least self-viewed, he kind of gets stuck into this situation in a way. Like he's a doctor. He's supposed to be going to London. And I really love early on, when they after Mihail is killed, and that's I think a great start to the movie.
Yeah, it does not give you much time. It just basically kicks you in the nuts within the first 10 minutes.
You start this like really friendly, fun soccer game. You're like, these guys are
2
cool.
seconds,
This is going to be cute. And then immediately they're approached by a group of
British black and tans.
Dickheads, I was going to say. Yes, a little more accurate. Yeah, pushed up against the wall, forced to like give their names and ages and papers, and Mihail won't do it.
Yeah.
He starts speaking Gaelic like he can't understand them, and they're not going to have it, and kill him.
Yeah.
So it's a rough start to the movie, and basically this is kind of where Damien starts to get put in this pickle, because he's like, they want him to join their little rebel alliance.
The IRA.
Yeah. And then it's just
how
like
many retirement accounts do you have?
And then I'm like, that's not a bad deal. Just over time, longevity. Right. But he won't do it at first because he's going to, he's supposed to be going to London. He's supposed to become, a doctor or whatever.
Yeah.
And he starts to get trapped into this, like, his best friend gets killed for really no reason. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then he sees the incident in the train and stuff. And I really find, I think early in the movie too, Sinead asks him that question when they're like kind of arguing. They're trying to get him, to, to join. He's not going to do it. And Sinead, who ends up, is his love interest in the movie, she's, she kind of makes that comment like, we all don't have a one-way ticket to London, Damien. And I feel like you kind of see him like just turn and walk away after that comment, because I think it means something coming from Sinead for her to say that.
Yeah.
And it just starts to, I think that is part of like trapping him too.
Yeah. Well, and especially in a situation like this where you have the haves and the have-nots, and a lot of times in a war like this, you do find yourself like that. I mean, Nazi Germany would have been the same way, where affluent people who didn't agree with the Nazis and Hitler's ideology, they were able to escape through their means before things got bad.
Yeah.
And they were able to escape to London or the U.S. or whatever, whereas the poorer people were stuck. They couldn't just leave Germany, and it would be the same thing here, where they couldn't just leave Northern Ireland.
Right.
They were stuck, so they had to basically fight or die, and because the British weren't really giving them much option. You know what I mean? Like, even for people who weren't really doing anything. You know what I mean? Like, just that opening scene with Mihail. I mean, it was just like, oh, well, you're not supposed to congregate. Well, I mean, good Lord. Like, now you're talking, I mean, that's just
you're playing
fascist.
A game of, like,
soccer or whatever.
With
like,
a
field
stick.
hockey is like field hockey. So, yeah.
Defense against the Realm Act. No free, or no public gatherings. Like, okay.
Right, there you go. Yeah, exactly. And it's just, so that kind of stuff, people obviously don't take too kindly to.
Sure.
So you feel trapped. You feel trapped because you don't feel free.
You're not.
So people, right, and they're not. So they had to, fight back. And for Damien, in his mind in that moment, it's easy to say, oh, well, I'm going to go be a doctor in London. but it's also like going into enemy territory,
Sure.
if you will. 'Cause
Being
it's
trained by the enemy, potentially living there the rest of
Right.
your life. Who knows?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a I guess it's being viewed as kind of like the cowardly way out.
Right.
But that is, I mean, like you said, that was what a lot of people had to do, and they even mentioned in the movie, every time things get bad, do we want all our people just go off to London and go off to the United States to live, or are we going to actually like make this a country where people can live?
Yeah.
And I kind of mentioned before, like they don't really explain the politics too much. Not unless that leads to the war.
Yeah.
It's like you've got to. I think the first time through, you really got to hang on, just kind of be like, figure out what side Damien's on, and then just kind of like branch out from there.
Yeah, I think that is true, and it can be a risk just because you are in a way trying to maybe convince people of the Damien's point of view,
Right?
And they're doing it a lot through action, as far as
Yeah.
like the Mihail opening scene and the train scene, and and multiple scenes going forward throughout the movie where it's clearly the British are an invading force and
Yeah.
feel like an invading force. You're not really seeing any other point of view besides that. But there are a few scenes where I think they do try to interject some of the politics in, and I have a little, not a ton. I by no means know a lot about this long-standing issue
Sure.
between Northern Ireland and the UK and all of that. But I mentioned Dairy Girls earlier. Funny thing about this, through all of this stuff that kind of goes on in this movie, it's not the end. Like this conflict
no.
continues to go on for another
Yeah.
70 years because it's not actually until the 90s where another, like, I guess, resolution treaty, whatever you want to call it, is brought up, and to basically give Northern Ireland their freedom, if you will,
Yeah.
and they had to vote on it, and that's actually a big part of the end of Dairy Girls, which again is an
Well, sure.
amazing show, and it's a great moment for that. So it is interesting to watch this movie, all of these ins and outs, and know that it's not the end.
and that's what so many of their arguments are, because kind of toward the end of the movie, it's kind of making this play toward compromise, and it's
Right.
Is compromise good or bad? Like, and I don't remember if it was just Dan or if it was like Cole or whatever, but like they make those speeches like we're an inch away from freedom right now, but it's such a
Right.
big inch, and we're not. If we don't go now, we're never going to get it in our lifetimes, and it's true because they don't. Because it's going to go on for another 70 years because they don't go all in on freedom. They do take the compromise. And so you're playing the long game. And I guess maybe you can say it works. It worked 70 years later, but it worked.
Right.
But, there was a lot of death in between then.
Well, yeah, and so kind of one thing I mentioned earlier about you're basically getting Damien's point of view, even with Teddy being on the same side and being somewhat of a a supporting character. I do feel like you're only kind of getting a snippet of his point of view,
Yeah.
and his rationale behind going with the treaty,
Right.
and becoming a free stater, if you will.
Yeah. He
And-
is. He's wearing the Free State uniform. So.
Right, exactly. And so, in this conversation, I do want to kind of maybe give him at least a little bit of leeway in our conversation, and maybe try to project a little bit of what I think his rationales would be,
Sure.
beyond just like some of the flyby stuff I feel like we get in a couple of the scenes with him and Damien.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's work our way there a little bit. I think, when I think about things I love in this movie, some of the death scenes in this movie are really, really, I think, impactful.
Oh,
and almost
yeah.
like where there's rewatchability. Where like, I want to watch that scene again, not because it's fun to watch, but because it's not, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I think there, one of those really interesting ones is when basically Damien has to kill Chris and
Yes.
and
It's
John,
a big one.
the big one. So,
Yeah.
up to that point, they had done some things to like piss off the English soldiers. They've killed a group of English soldiers. They kind of threatened them like, no more harassing us or we're going to kill you. And then
Yeah.
they got harassed, so they kill them. They're on the radar. And then unfortunately, Chris, one of the young kids, a little farmhand of this guy, John, played by Hamilton.
Well, he plays Louis Prothero in
V for Vendetta.
but his name is Roger Alum.
Yeah, and he's great.
Alum, I think.
He's
Alum.
great in V for Vendetta. He's
Yeah.
in this. He's not in this long enough to be great, but he's not bad.
Right.
But he, so he kind of Chris gets put in this situation where he has to rat the group out, and he kind of tells them where they are, and then they get captured.
Yeah.
Which actually is a great scene in and of itself. I think that jail scene where they're ripping Teddy's fingernails
Oh
off
man. Yeah.
is tough to watch, and all the guys are kind of. I don't want to. I'm gonna feel like I'm starting to recap like 20 minutes of the movie in 20 minutes. It's not good,
Sure.
but anyway, they get ratted out. They don't get to save all their friends when they escape because they have a soldier that helps them escape, which is great. They threaten that you better not kill those guys we left behind. They do. So then they kidnap John,
John Hamilton.
and they capture Chris. They get Chris, and
Yeah.
all right, well,
They're ordered to kill him.
yeah, they're ordered to kill him for ratting them out.
Yeah.
For being traitors essentially.
Mhm.
But killing John is one thing. He's just a big landowner, probably
Right.
capitalist type dude,
Right.
and he was on the British side. He had no problem ratting these dudes out.
England prevails.
Love E for Vendetta. But it's still like Damien had to shoot him in the head, and Damien has that line where he's like, "I'm a doctor, studied anatomy for 4 years, now I have to shoot a man in the head."
Yeah.
And then when he talked about Chris, he's like, "I've known Chris since he was a kid,
Yeah.
and now I got to kill him. Like, I hope this is all going to be worth it."
Yeah.
Which I think is a great line. But just seeing Cillian Murphy act in this way, like killing a man for the first time at like point blank range,
Yeah.
and then killing your friend, and he's like, "Did you write your papers?" I love that line.
The letters.
Yeah, you write your letters.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Didn't know what to say."
I didn't know what to say.
My
Yeah.
mom can't
My
read
mom
anyway.
Can't read anyway. And
Tell
it's
her I
like,
love her, and I love Chris. The line that gets me with Chris is like, "Don't bury me next to him. Like,
Right.
don't bury me next to John. He was the traitor. I was scared." You know what I
Right.
mean? Kind of like in that implication.
Absolutely. And I think that's, it's kind of one of the pitfalls of a righteous war like this, when you have to understand that, especially in a situation like this, where you might expect that Chris is, in that moment he shouldn't have said anything,
Right.
or whatever, but they threatened his family,
Yeah.
and all of that, and it's like to have that expectation that you're willing to let everybody and love die for the cause. That's hard,
Right.
and it's a lot, and there are some people that might be willing to do that, but not nearly as many as I think people would like to believe.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
exist
at the end of the
in
day,
in that regard.
Chris's decision is have them kill his family for not writing out his friends, or have him kill his friends for protecting his family. Like, he
Right.
couldn't win.
Right, it was a lose-lose, 100%.
Yeah. So he chose to have his friends die instead of his family die, which I'm sure he didn't feel good about. Like, he he didn't do this willingly,
No,
but he still did it. And
Yeah.
so the orders were that he had to die.
Yeah.
And I love Damien when he does kill Chris. He has to just turn around and basically run away because he's
Yeah.
probably crying, about to puke, just absolutely torn up.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a powerful scene.
Yeah, no, I agree completely, and again, it kind of goes to that arc of Damien where you see a change in him.
Yeah.
That kind of happens through this movie. The funny thing about it is, I feel like that's not this arc is not really an uncommon thing for a movie like this.
Sure.
Where you have that kind of reluctant character that is in the beginning is not unwilling, but just doesn't want to get wrapped up in whatever this is, and then by the end of the movie is full bore, I'm going to die for
Right.
this. So, and that's a pretty common tale. So, but these benchmark moments in the movie that kind of show his willingness and his loyalty to the IRA and to the cause,
commitment
to a
to the
free
cause.
Northern Ireland, like that kind of thing. They are powerful moments, and you see maybe and this is going to sound like a negative, but maybe not. I guess again, it's perspective. Is you almost kind of see a little bit of him die inside,
Sure, yeah.
with every time.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that can be a good thing or a bad thing, I guess, depending on what you want your ultimate outcome to be. But
And
it's the
that's-
truth nonetheless.
Yeah, that's a part of being trapped. Like,
Right.
you're not gonna be a good person and kill somebody, even bad people, and feel good about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a really good display too. And like their little like the ambush scene, which is like kind of their like big climax scene almost of like their big action scene when they there's that they're all hiding in the countryside. And there's two
With the British convoy.
the two trucks of the British convoy, and it's an ambush, and they just start shooting and killing, and they win pretty one-sidedly. They only lost one guy.
Yeah.
But you can see there's certain characters like Congo and others who are like they're tore up about it. Like,
Yeah.
it is they're like, we just killed all these men, their bodies are right here, like this is and they're crying almost, what I mean?
Well,
'Cause
and then they
that's
lose
war.
a guy. They lose Gogan
Yeah.
in that battle. But yeah, and I think that's another interesting element to this movie altogether. And we kind of talked in the beginning about how this wasn't. It's a war movie, but it doesn't feel like a war movie in the traditional sense. And I think one of the things that really drives that home are the type of men in the IRA. It's funny how in this kind of almost guerrilla style warfare that because it's really more or less what it is. They're still kind of trying to find this like regimentation a little bit in there with like some of their drills and their trainings and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they're just like they're men in their Sunday suits. You know what I mean? Like they're out there in their button-up shirts,
they're wearing
and
their trench coats.
and their
it's cold outside.
fancy shoes or whatever, and they're out there in the woods with their and their fancy hats, which are top quality hats. I'm going to say capital hats across the board. But I think about that scene, like the initial training scene, and they're like, "There'll be clean shoes on your corpse." Right. When they're like, when he was like, "You're not willing to trudge through the mud to get up here." Like there'll be clean shoes on your corpse if you don't do this. So it's an interesting frame of mind that you feel like these guys have to be in to even be a part of this.
Right.
And so I think that kind of goes to maybe some of the desperation for guys like Teddy to find some semblance of peace in this.
Yeah.
Because these men don't feel like soldiers in that way.
Right.
And so kind of, as we said earlier, giving Teddy some of the benefits of the doubt on some of these issues that they don't necessarily go into, I think that's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the movie almost kind of, there's a turning point where a lot of the movies where you're fighting Englishmen, and then later in the movie there's a term where it starts to turn more Civil War, and a lot of these people you're fighting are your friends. I want to get to that in a second, but I want to bring up Sinead.
Okay.
Sinead, who...
I love Sinead O'Connor.
And Sinead in this movie gets a Sinead O'Connor. She gets her head shaved.
That
minutes
was
before,
not lost on me.
Minutes before the truce. I'm like, why couldn't you just have cut my hair tried to cut my hair 10 minutes later? But I think there's a really interesting... Again, because they don't over-explain the politics of the movie, you have to have kind of like characters like Sinead and her family to kind of, I think, show some other sides of things or show from a little bit different perspectives, because obviously Sinead is a woman in 1920, so she's not like a fighter in this,
right? She's more of like she's a clerk in the court, but she's also like a runner of information, like courier type person. She has a few different jobs in this movie. She does,
she passes along information. She passes them like supplies and like cigarettes and stuff. She's like an undercover agent in some ways,
right?
That kind of nobody would suspect her, and she does a really good job. But then she, I kind of mentioned earlier, she is kind of like the love interest for Damien, and a lot of the big things happen on their farm. So like that's where Meow was killed,
right? And
then there's a scene where again they're looking for the men after this big like ambush, and then they basically just burn the house down, and they like cut off all of Sinead's hair. But I love the scene after that where like the grandparents won't leave.
Yeah.
The house is burned down. She's like, I'll go live in the kitchen, cook the chicken coop.
I'm gonna clean out the chicken coop, and like I'm gonna live there. And Sinead's like, no, like Grandma, we can't do that. We can't go live in there. Like I can't, and like begging Damien to take her away from this because like it's becoming too much to have to deal with this. And like you said, it all happening on one spot. I definitely understand that. It's like, why here? Right. What is it about this spot in the universe that like all this crap has to happen?
Yeah, and it was the gathering point for the kind of the guys of that town were,
That's true.
And they were, but it speaks to that family because they're the ones housing them. They are the ones giving them the supplies and like letting them sleep there and feeding them and stuff. So like the family knew what they were getting into, and they're, Sinead's mom and Sinead's grandma don't get a lot of screen time, but obviously like they're letting these people, they're freedom fighters too,
right?
In their supportive way. They're willing to deal with the cost, and Non is too. She's like, I'll live in the burnt down house, She's probably tough, and Sinead says, I'm not as tough as you, Non. It's a great scene. And not to mention, all the guys are watching this happen from the tree line.
And they can't do anything because they're outnumbered. They don't have any bullets or anything like that, which, that brings up another interesting element of this movie. We've talked about the politics of it, and there's only really a couple of scenes where I feel like you do really get the politics of it, and sometimes it's like the dirty inside politics of it. And I think one of the most interesting scenes for me, and maybe the most interesting scene for me, is the courtroom scene.
Yeah.
With the moneylender and the landlord. Like that guy, like that scene is so fascinating to me because it shows an inner working of rebellion that I don't feel like people get a lot of.
Right.
Like up to this point, you'd kind of seen them, you'd seen the IRA raiding different British barracks and stuff like that, trying to
Getting
get
weapons.
weapons and bullets and whatever they could get. But in this scene, that you're seeing a landlord or money lender who has kind of taken advantage of an old woman and is like, oh, I'm charging her like 500% interest or some crazy crap like that.
Jerk.
And right, exactly, and clearly in the wrong, and the court rules against him, and they're
Orders him to pay her.
all right,
10
orders him
bucks.
to play her, right? And you can see like Damien and oh crap, the guy who ends up getting shot at the
Dan.
end. Dan,
Liam
thank you.
Cunningham from
Yep, Liam
Game of
Cunningham
Thrones.
from Cunningham. Yep, that's right. And he, they're obviously very much on the old woman's side. But before the man goes down to the jail or whatever, Teddy and his guys take the guy and leave.
Right.
Like they're like, get him out of there, go, 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 because they want his money.
Right.
Like they need him to fund their weapons, like acquisitions.
Yeah.
So it's and then it kind of turns into a big blow up between Damien and Dan and Teddy and his goons, because it's like, well, we need to do this. Like, I need his money. I can't have him like sulking in jail. Like, I need him on our side. So he needs to get off from and they're like, well, what about her? Like, you're just gonna no justice for her? And it's like, well, it's the greater good kind of situation. And
Yeah. And you have to remember,
fascinating.
it is, because you have to remember a lot of this was kind of came from like the potato famine days, where like the country is starving, but like England is still shipping all their goods out to other countries to make a buck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like and that's so much where Damien comes from, is like, it's not about the elite, it's about the people, the regular blue collar people here.
Right.
And that's a great example of like the country willing to leave the blue collar people behind, in order to kind of like push their agenda, I guess. Like Teddy is willing for this old woman to be starving and broke because he's seeing more potential long-term goals.
Yeah.
Where Damien's like, this, like, if we're gonna, and Damien and Dan and others, like, if this is what we're gonna look past to get to the ends, like, that's not gonna justify the means to them.
Well, yeah, because you're trying to build something new. You're trying or like build something fair. That's the other part of it too, is build something fair. And it's hard to do that when you have these people who don't believe in the British system or whatever, because they believe it's corrupt and unfair and all of these things. And then you have this system here that you're using to try to counterbalance that, but then you corrupt it because you need it to be corrupt for your means, and it's just a cycle. And and that's what kind of breeds cynics.
Sure.
And one thing we haven't really mentioned, and we'll kind of talk about this more, I'm sure, in other aspects as well, is Damien is a staunch socialist.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's something that he mentions multiple times. Once the treaty is signed and the backlash happens, there's a lot of socialist tracts that are written either by Damien or people that he knows, but he supports nonetheless. And that becomes a kind of a sticking point between him and Teddy. And I think this scene is a big, like, foreshadowing of things to come.
Yeah, I think this is the first time where the movie shows you that all these guys aren't on the same page in regards to the end game.
Right.
Like right now, yes, we want to get these English soldiers out of Ireland, and how are we going? This seems where they start to say, you start to see the difference of how they think they can actually do that.
Right.
Because in your brain, you're like, all right, this is a war movie, just go kill everybody.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, get them out, get them to quit, get them to tap out. The other side of that is that possible? Can you get England and the British Empire to tap out?
Right.
Will they tap out? What will that make them look like if they do tap out? What will India do? What will these other countries that are under their thumb do if they let Ireland make them tap out?
Right.
And that's where I think after this courtroom scene and after this scene where Sinead's farm is burned, that's when they start to throw that at you and make you think about it.
Well, and as far as our central question goes, about the man of action and the man of words, if by this point you still see Teddy as a man of action and these are his actions, are they worth it? And I think that's something to consider as well. Even when we're talking about if it's true or not, even if it is true, is it worth it? And I think that's something to be considered as well.
Yeah.
What are you fighting for?
And so what they end up fighting for, we learn in like the next scene when they a little bit of a comedy scene where they have a comedic scene, I should say, where like they have this little dude is coming out to pass him a really important message. This little kid comes in
Oh,
on a
yeah.
bike. That's how information was passed in the 1920s via bike and kid. And he loses the note, can't find it. He's going through all his pockets, and then find out that he dropped it up the driveway. Anyway, but there was a truce declared in Ireland at this time. And some movies portray this truce as really, really good.
Yeah.
This movie portrays this truce as really, really bad, where the truce was basically they'll have their own parliament, but it has to be loyal to the king.
Right.
That's not what they've been fighting to get separation from the king.
Right.
Basically, they will remain in the domain of the British Empire.
Right. Yeah. Basically.
They will they will have no soldiers there. They can have their own government. They can make their own tariffs and all that stuff. But they're still going to be in the domain of the British Empire. And to half of the guys, that's not anywhere near what they wanted from a truce, and they're not willing to declare truce.
Yeah.
And to the other half of guys, that is the compromise they want. And I feel like this is where the movie really gets complicated in a good way,
complicated,
because it does put two brothers on the other side, where Teddy and Damien are on strictly opposing sides here.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it's almost like it went from an American Revolution in the first half of the movie to an American Civil War in the second half of the movie. But you know what I mean? It's like both of them together, where you've got, in the beginning they're fighting the British, and then in the end they're fighting each other.
Well, yeah, I think there's even that one scene where I don't know what you would call Damien's side. There's the Free Staters, which is Teddy's side. These are the people that want the treaty. I guess they called them anti-treaties.
Anti-treaty IRA,
yeah. And so they basically hold up the Free Staters at one point at gunpoint on the wagon, and they're like, "Rory, stop, Rory!" So they know who they're wearing masks, but they know who they are. So this is like a true civil war. Where like you're fighting your friends.
Yeah.
And I find that to be so interesting. They were not just walking to like they did early in the movie. They walked into the bar and they killed these 4 random British soldiers. They're killing their friends now.
Yeah.
And
the uniforms don't help.
Yeah.
The uniforms don't help. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah. So
they're trying not to be the British or be different. The uniforms aren't helping. I'm just letting them know.
The Free Stater uniform is not getting it done. So,
but you can understand, like, and this is, and you're right. You kind of mentioned the perspective of either side of this. Is it good? Is it bad? Whatever. So as far as this movie is concerned, in the point of view of Damien, I can understand why he wouldn't want this and why he would be anti-treaty.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that they would still consider themselves part of the British Empire.
Right.
And I think that's the whole, like you said, that's the whole point, is that they don't want to be part of the British Empire.
Because they know what that means.
Right.
Yeah. They know, like, we have this tree now, they can start breaking it whenever they want. Or I think Damien calls it public versus private welfare, because he knows the rich people, the ones in Parliament are going to take money from the British Empire and do whatever the British Empire want. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how this game has always worked and will always continue to work.
Right. Well, yeah, and especially with politics in that regard, because you're right. Like, the British Empire would, I'm sure, have outsized, control over certain aspects that you may not notice on the outside.
Right.
Because they're at that point, you can't imagine that they're going to let this free state, if you will, operate without having their thumb on it in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Just because they're right on their doorstep.
Right.
As that would be their excuse. Like, well, they're right on our doorstep.
Yeah.
We can't not have control of this.
Yeah.
So
it's been that way for 700 years. Why would you really think it's going to change? Is basically where Damien's at in this movie.
Right, exactly. And as you said, Teddy basically becomes part of the national army, if you will, the Free State Army. But this kind of brings us to another scene. We mentioned earlier the courtroom scene about the politics of it. I think maybe the second most fascinating scene in that regard is the church scene.
Mm-hmm.
And just because it kind of took the scope farther out, because when you have the Catholic Church get involved, like, that's a whole other thing.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Yes, the Catholic Church, there was centered on that Catholic Church in that that town and that in Ireland, but the Catholic Church as a political body is global.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting to have it where they were bringing in how higher up clergymen were supportive of the treaty and all of this, and they were very much fighting and pushing their point of view within the church, which I think is another interesting aspect of it.
Yeah, I'm sure the church is anti-war, and anti-death, and the treaty is going to provide that. So again, in some ways that makes sense. British soldiers are going to be leaving Ireland, I believe that's part of the treaty.
Yeah, it was.
At this time, for a time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? For a time. And so obviously the church wants to support that. But again, Damien is playing more of a long game, or thinking more of a long game.
Well, and you think about stability and again equality, because I think that's the other
Equality,
part of it as well.
yes.
Even by when he stands up and has his rant in the church, he ends it with once again the Catholic Church sides with the rich,
Right.
and I totally can understand that sentiment in this time, because I'm sure believes and knows, really, in all honesty, not just believes that like you said earlier, that's what's going to happen, is that
Mhm.
like the ruling class is going to continue to rule. It's just Dan had a really great line. It was the only thing that'll change, the accents of the powerful and the color of the flag. The only
Right.
things that will change are the accents of the powerful and the color of the flag.
Yeah.
So like that kind of thing. So and again, fighting for the working class in that country, that's obviously a big aspect of
obviously,
what
yeah.
Damien is fighting for.
Yeah, like I said, coming off the potato famine, they saw their country nearly starve to death.
Yeah.
And they just, and again, they don't think that will change with where they're at. And so, yeah, it's a very interesting scene. I mean, it shows, again, Damien, to stand up in the middle of Sunday service back in the 20s, where their priest was like just the most influential figure of the town, the scariest figure maybe to some, to stand up in the middle of church, not to having a separate conversation on a Thursday night,
Yeah.
to stand up in the middle of church to express his views and walk out,
Yeah.
I think shows that, again, that commitment to Damien that I don't know as a character if he knew he had at the beginning of the movie. And I think that's a strong display that he is invested in his conviction.
Yeah, well, and that's a great, going to our central question, man of action, man of words. I mean, yes, he's using words in this scene, but I mean, would in this scene, would you see him more as a man of action or a man of words?
In this scene, he's
Yeah.
he's a man of action. Walking
Okay.
out, I think, is a huge action, right?
Yeah,
I think he kind of mentions too, like I like the line too, like it's not this treaty, because they get a lot of exposition done in this scene as well, because the priest is basically explaining the politics of the whole country really quickly, where he's like, this treaty was voted on by the country and overwhelmingly approved, and then the girl has to speak up, who was, I think she was the judge in the courtroom scene, like
I think you're right.
and then, but she was like,
I didn't catch that, but I think you're right.
the Constitution was approved at 7 a.m. We had to vote on it later in the afternoon.
Right,
Nobody had a chance to
read it.
So there's
How
a
many
lot,
people can read?
right?
We already know
yeah.
that Chris Riley's grandma couldn't, so
Yeah.
her mother couldn't.
So it's like, they're getting a lot of exposition done in this argument that you're just kind of catching up on the fly. You
Yeah.
have no idea any of this has happened. And then, the quote I want to get to is, people didn't vote for this because they thought it was the best idea. They just voted on it because they thought it would ease some killing killing, and so he kind of screams, this is not the will of the people, but it's the fear of the people.
fear of the people, yeah.
Which is a great line, because he's like, this decision isn't being made because they think it's its best. This decision is being made because it's going to keep them alive for now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so much of that is like just the politics of that time, where it's like they're using fear to get what they want instead of like best practice.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And just going back to Damien for a second, he obviously has I guess, confrontation, if you will, with Teddy, following the interior church scene is an exterior church scene, but he carries himself differently now.
Mm-hmm.
You can even see that in Cillian's performance, where he goes from this more kind of like mild-mannered doctor type in the beginning to a more, like you said, kind of a forceful person in these moments. He's more confrontational. He's more willing to fight for what he believes in. So I think that is, again, a testament to Cillian's performance, but also, just the arc of the story.
Yeah, he's had to kill for this.
Right.
Damien,
right. I mean, that scene definitely changed him.
Yeah, Damien's killed for this. And he's like, I've had to kill people, and now you want me to compromise?
Yeah.
Where, again, I think if we touch on Teddy here, because Teddy is willing to compromise. He sees some wins here with the British soldiers leaving and playing
Right.
the long game, and he says, like, we were never going to get this to all the
Right.
way this time. I was like, well, it didn't seem like that's what you were fighting for.
Right, and that's a really good point, because is that him just trying to rationalize in the moment, or
Right.
is that really
He's
what
settling.
he always thought? Right,
Right.
exactly. I think that's a perfectly fair question, because it's easy to say now when this is done to be like, well, we were never going to get this. Come on.
Right.
Like, just because, well, now you're not going to get it.
Right.
But, you know,
Yeah,
you
just
could
want
have.
you just want any win instead of like the big win. And so and I think it's interesting here because again, there's movies where that side of the argument has been portrayed as really good.
Sure.
Liam Neeson's movie, I think, does that.
Right, Michael
Like,
Collins.
Yeah, but this movie doesn't do that, and because of that, like Teddy starts to come across as villainous because he's on the opposite side of Damien.
Right.
Which I think is interesting that they now put these two brothers on this opposite side, and you have like almost like the good one and the bad one, or like the good one and the better one, because like, you know, again, that they all kind of want this good thing for Ireland. I love the complexity, but it's like it's just not enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or at least, and the movie, that's how the movie portrays it. Maybe that's unfair. And I think I mentioned before, I have seen people criticize this movie because it's too one-sided.
Sure.
But I don't care.
But I'm sure Michael Collins is probably
Sure.
one-sided too. And I mean, and that's the thing when you're doing something from like a specific character's point of view. You know what I mean? So like and that's why I wanted to try to be fair to Teddy, but also realize that this movie is from Damien's perspective. So I'm going with what this movie is telling me.
Right.
If this was movie from Teddy's point of view, or it was, you know, more equal from both, then I, you know, could speak one way or the other. But because it's just from Damien, I'm going off of that. So you're right. I end up rooting for Damien way more than I root for Teddy because, I mean, one, I find myself, you know, agreeing with his convictions a little bit more.
Sure.
But I think I'm also supposed to. You know, we talk about the Hitchcock thing all the time. So like that, I think that totally stands here.
What about the fact that we do know history that this doesn't work?
Well, that is fair. Like, it is part of it. You know, if this was something that you were learning in the moment, you may feel differently. But, you know, looking back with 100 years of
Damien was
history,
wrong,
right, or whatever. But like with 100 years of hindsight and realizing that, this treaty didn't like take into the really into the end zone, if you will, to use a sports metaphor. It's I think that's also. It makes you side with Damien and say you could have fought for so much more,
right?
You know, if you had really tried. But so this is an interesting question that I wanted to pose to you. So obviously, our overall question is dissecting both Teddy and Damien from that parameter of man of action, man of words. Do you think that maybe Teddy changed after that prison scene where he had his fingernails pulled out?
Good question.
You know what I mean? Like, do you think before that he really was a man of action? Then he saw that as the reality of it, because a lot of people can change that stuff like that when it's hit them personally.
Yeah.
It's easy to say something and be like, oh, well, if this happens X, Y, and Z, I don't care. I'm gonna believe what I believe no matter what. But in an instance like that where he is captured, he is tortured and all of that, yes, he didn't break, but it's still the reality of what's coming or what could come.
Yeah. Or maybe I don't want to do that again. Like, I survived it once, could I survive it twice? So it definitely, like, if there was a moment that was going to change Teddy, if he wasn't always that way, then I'd say that would have to be it. You know what I mean? I think because he's not there when Chris gets killed. That's that's passed along to Damien and stuff, and he does a lot. He turns into a lot more of like the political side. It feels like after that,
right?
And less on boots on the ground,
right?
He is involved in the ambush scene. I think he's the point man in that, I will say. But that again, that's very much a group setting. Yeah. That seemed like they had a really good advantage on the whole time.
That's true. They had the high ground.
Yeah. But yeah, I think there is that. I think that's fair because I think the movie is showing that these two characters may have started on opposite sides and then switch. One was the man of action and became a man of words potentially. We'll finish talking about, and then vice versa with Damien. But I think as you mentioned, the back third of this movie becomes a Civil War movie, not a Revolutionary War movie.
Right.
And so I think one of the scenes that shows that the best is after we kind of mentioned how Rory stole guns from his, I won't say his friends, but from the Free Staters and stuff. Yeah. And then they got to retaliate. So where do they go look for Rory? Back to Sinead's farm.
Back to Sinead's farm.
But it's
again.
But it's a perfect juxtaposition though, because they are the ones that were hiding here at one point. Yep. And now they're the ones invading it.
Yeah.
They were the ones that wanted to beat the hell out of the soldiers for harassing this family. And now they're the ones
harassing
harassing this
family.
family.
Right, and they put him up against the wall, and it's a great scene too because you can see the conflict on the soldiers' faces, the Free Staters' faces, because you're right, they do know them. They did, as the grandmother said, like, oh, we used to feed you, you used to come here and eat, shelter you and do all these things, like, and this is how you treat us now. It's for shame,
Right.
and like all of this, and they know it. They know it's true. They know that they're in the wrong, but at this point, they've committed themselves to this new cause, if you will, the cause of the Free State, to try to, again, stave off maybe what they believed is, bigger
annihilation.
Right,
is
annihilation.
how you'll frame
sure,
it.
Right. Because you're right. Like in the end, they do believe that they can't win.
Yeah.
So it's they're gonna not they're gonna do what they have to do to I guess just
They're
keep the
tapping
status
out.
quo, if you will.
They're tapping out those babies.
Right, and it's true.
Yeah. And then the movie kind of gets into that third act where the anti-treatiers, Damien and Dan, have one more plan to steal some ammo and stuff, and it goes awry.
Yeah.
Dan gets shot and killed after Damien kills somebody, a friend of theirs, or kills one of the soldiers.
Yeah.
Dan gets shot and killed, and instead of just running away, like, this is war, Damien, people are going to die, just keep going. The empathy part of Damien kicks in, and he's a very empathetic character. You see that in some of those doctor scenes throughout the movie where he's always checking on bodies, trying to fix and heal people. But he can't leave Dan's body there,
right,
and ends up letting himself get arrested because of it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I hate that he does that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously.
But it's him.
Right, and it is him. And before we talk about, so obviously we have the scene with him and Damien and Teddy in the prison cell. But before we get to that, I want to, in my mind, I kind of want to contextualize this a little bit because, with our central question, man of words, man of action, I one of the things about the Damien character that I find so interesting, and part of the reason why I think, and he said those words at that early point in the movie, characterizing himself as such and Teddy as such, is because he felt like he was living in Teddy's shadow.
Right.
Like he wasn't, he didn't measure up to Teddy, didn't measure up to his brother. So I think that could in some ways be what drove him through this movie, was trying to kind of chase this shadow, chase this older brother-esque type character. And I think that this is an interesting culmination of that, where you kind of have this kind of final battle, final confrontation between these two characters who have gone through such great change through the course of this movie.
Yeah, because they're at the point where they need to know where everybody's hiding.
Right.
And basically, Damien is put in the position of Chris.
Yeah.
Where Chris ratted everybody out, gave away where everybody was at, and Damien killed.
Well, they
Chris.
really want Rory.
Where Rory's at.
Yeah.
But that part of the group now.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, and Damien killed Chris because of that, for ratting them out. And that's prescient in his mind. He's like, I'm not going to break. I'm not going to tell you where everybody's at. Like, I killed Chris for this. I'm not going to. What would it mean if I did it after I killed a man for this very same thing?
Right.
And so, is that stubbornness? Is it smart? Is it good natured? I don't know. It's not self-perseverance, though.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I think, again, it kind of goes back to our central question, which we'll ultimately answer. But I think that this kind of shows the arc of Damien at this point where he does believe in his convictions. And like I said, I think it's funny because I think ultimately, Teddy's the one, he says, I've never begged a man before, but I'm going to beg you right now. But, he so wants to save Damien. But I think it's hard to say he isn't the reason why Damien is there. Because of what I said before. Damien was chasing this shadow of his brother and wanting to be the man of action, and now this is where it has led him. Like, this is where the man of action has led him. So it's interesting because we will ultimately answer our question, but the question beyond that is was it worth it?
Right.
Because we even said that earlier with Teddy in those moments, like when he was freeing the moneylender. Yeah. And like, well, is this worth it? If this is what action is it worth it?
Right.
But as far as the scene goes and the two actors, I mean, obviously Cillian Murphy, I think this is one of the things that I love about Cillian Murphy as an actor is he's such a subtle actor, but he finds like such power in his subtlety.
Yeah.
Like, he's not a bombastic actor. Like, in some movies, he'll have a couple of scenes here or there when he gets, kind of animated and really, but there's a stoicism about him that I think really just rings so true, and especially in a scene like this, because Pádraic Delaney, Pádraic,
sure.
Teddy, he's also really good. But I think it's so funny because you going back to what I was saying earlier, about kind of the switching characters. I feel like Teddy feels like such a weak character in this scene, not a weak performance.
Right.
Like the character himself has been so broken down by almost getting what he wanted. You know what I mean? Like, he wanted the end to the conflict. He compromised to get the end of the conflict, and this is where he is now. In fact, at one point he even says, like, I want out of this uniform. Like, he even says, like, I want out of this uniform, Damien. Like, it's like in his mind, he thinks, well, I made this compromise. I put this uniform on so I could take it off later.
Right.
Once we're stable, then we can break the treaty. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like this weird kind of strategy that,
it's like, why
put in your
settle?
head that you're right, exactly. And he's got himself in this situation now where he's, his brother's going to be put to death.
Yeah, and that is the argument. It's like Teddy's like, and Teddy phrases it perfectly here, where he's like, we can tear this treaty up in a couple years, but it's like, let's just take a break. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Where Dan, that earlier comment that I said, Dan was like, we're an inch away, we can't stop now, and that is the other side. Those are the two sides of the argument. That it's a 1 inch gap between them, metaphorically, but it's unpassable for either one of them.
Yeah.
And this is what I kind of really dug about the movie the first time I saw it. Is like, I never would have thought this is where the ending of the movie is going to be up to any point in the first hour and a half.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? Where it's going to end with Damien on a firing post. Is that what you would call that?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
in front of a bunch of dudes.
Firing squad.
In front of a firing squad, and it's Teddy giving the command.
Yeah.
Right. And again, he tries to save him one more time, and I love the line where he's like, Damien's coming up to him, or Teddy's coming up to Damien, like you said, looking weak, crying. This is this is probably something's going to break him for the rest of his life. He's going to keep going. And he says, it's not too late, Damien. And Damien's like, for me or for you?
Right.
You know what I mean? I just love that line. Like, who's the one who needs to stop here?
Yeah.
Me or you? But neither do. They both stayed with convictions, and then Damien gives the order, or Teddy gives the orders to fire on Damien, and they do shoot him, and he's dead.
Yeah, and I think the button scene on this, where if you want to even call it a bit of a prologue, where Teddy goes to see Sinead, and so it's actually, circle back just real fast. We talked a bit about Sinead earlier, and I think that something about this scene that feels so great too is, so you remember earlier in the film, after Damien kills Chris, he talks to Sinead about going to see Chris's mother.
Yeah.
Like, that scene is so interesting because it's as a writer, a lot of times they'd be like, oh, well, show the scene. Don't have him tell, don't tell the story, show the scene. But I think it was so amazing how Damien show the remorse, if you will, of shooting Chris, showing him tell the story of walking 6 hours with his mother to the chapel where they buried him so he could see his grave, and then like all of her saying like, I never want to see you again, that kind of thing. Like, having that story told really kind of showed the effect that it had on Damien as a character.
Because you can't do both. You can't show the scene and then have him talk about it. You have to do one or the other.
Right, and he even said, like, I've crossed the line at that point. And that's how we were kind of saying earlier about, the shifting character. But obviously it makes for a great juxtaposition for this final scene, because Teddy has to kind of do the same thing that Damien did.
Yeah.
Where he has to go and tell Sinead that Damien is dead and all of that. And she throws him out and says, I never want to see your face again, and it's that same kind of thing.
Yep.
So, and again, at the house, I'm telling you, this house is cursed.
That damn house.
Sinead needs to move. Move, Sinead. That house is cursed.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
But I do think it's funny, though, and I have this in my notes. When Chris had to get killed, Damien did it. Damien pulled the trigger.
Yep.
Probably ruined him for the rest of his life. It's probably something he was never going to be able to forget. But he did it.
Yep.
Because he's the man of action to me. Mm-hmm. But Teddy, when it came to Damien's death, He spoke it.
Just
he
gave the
gave
order.
the order.
Spoke the words.
So let's pose the question to you one more time, Rob.
Yeah.
Man of action versus man of words. Was Damien right, or was he completely wrong?
I think he was completely right in the beginning of the movie and completely wrong by the end.
Life
I
changes
think
you.
that there was a direct line between both characters that just took them to the complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Where in the beginning, Damien didn't want to fight. He didn't I'm sure he believed
In the
free
cause,
state.
yeah.
He believed in the cause, but he didn't necessarily want to put his life on the line for it, whereas Teddy did, clearly. And then by the end, that completely flipped. Like, Teddy was just wanting to get out of it, however he could get out of it.
Yeah.
So he made the compromise just to get out of it, and Damien was like, no, like, I'm here, I've done it, I've already compromised, I've already killed myself a lot
Yeah.
through the course of this process. As
I already
said,
sold
like,
my soul.
Right, exactly. So I'm not gonna sell it for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is a big element of it. You know, another big thing with their relationship we didn't mention, but I am going to mention here because of a man of action. You know, one of the big things, I think a big moment in the movie when Damien really started shifting to the man of action and Teddy didn't, is when Damien claimed to be Teddy in prison before Teddy was tortured. In fact, they even say, Teddy mentions that in that last scene together, where they're like, oh, you know,
they meet in that cell,
right? And he's like, you know, I never did thank you for that. You know, you said you were me. I never did thank you for that. And I love Damien's response to that, for all the good it did you. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, you know,
maybe knowing that scene changed him.
Yeah.
To our point.
Yeah, I think that 100%. I think that scene changed him. I think it started the change for both.
Yeah.
I think Damien started becoming a man of action when he put himself out there in that scene to, you know, to take his brother's place. And then Teddy, he saw what action cost him.
Right.
And went in the opposite direction. And I think that, so, you know, but is it worth it? You know what I mean? Like, there you go. You know, in the end, like, that's the thing, is that worth it? So, you know, by the end of the movie, yes, Damien's the man of action. It cost him his life, but it took 70 years for any real change to happen.
Which is what
after
they were
this.
scared of.
Right, exactly. So, you know, and same thing with Teddy. You know, what was it worth it to get to this point?
Yeah.
And I think that's a much harder to answer question.
You would think, like, you know, post movie for the rest of Teddy's life, every time there's an IRA bombing or something that and this thing is just continuing, he'd have to just be looking back, being like,
what did I do?
Why did I do it?
Why did I do this?
All right. Well, and then the bigger question, Rob.
The biggest.
You know, I presented you this movie because you'd never seen before. I loved it. You've never seen before. I wanted you to see if you'd like it. Did you? Did you like this movie, and would you recommend it?
Ray, the streak continues.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
This movie was great.
Good.
It was really great. I really enjoyed Cillian Murphy in this movie. I to be fair, I don't know if I've ever seen Cillian Murphy in a movie that I have not enjoyed. I think he's just a really stellar actor, and I think this movie is like right in his bailiwick, if you will. Barleywick. We'll call it right in his barleywick. But yeah, and as we kind of talked about, I really, really appreciated the arc of both the two main characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, as I said earlier, this is not like I'm not going to say unique. I'm not going to say it's not unique because of that makes it sound like it's a negative. But I'm just saying it's like
it's been done before.
Right, like this type of story has absolutely been done before, where multiple people end up in a conflict of some kind and end up believing opposite of where they started. Like that absolutely happens. But I do think that this movie really is very effective in some of the ways, and I think some of the things that they kind of talked about as far as war rebellion goes that we kind of mentioned earlier, some of the dirtier sides of it, as far as like, having to side with some bad people to, ensure that your side has what they need to win or, whatever. It's funny. It made me think of a totally different type of movie, but The Last Jedi, when Benicio del Toro, sorry, is on the ship and they're like going through the stolen ship with Finn or whatever, and they're like going through the records, and he's like, oh look, they're selling arms to the Empire, and then they get to like X-wing fighters, like, oh, and I guess the rebels too, you know what I mean? And it's just, it kind of goes, how do you really destroy an empire? Right. Well, not even just that, but the people that profiteer off of it, and like how wars are fought and like the dirty sides of it. We all know about the battles, this person, this army fought this army on this battlefield and they won. Blah, and maybe they used this tactic or that tactic. Yeah, blah, yada yada. But how did they get those guns? How did they get those bullets?
Right.
How did they get whatever? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of those inner workings and finer points of war that movies like this don't typically go into, and some of that stuff is actually kind of interesting.
Very.
And it made for a pretty deep story of these two brothers. So yeah, I really did enjoy this movie. I would definitely recommend it to anybody who is a war movie fan, even though it doesn't feel like your typical war movie.
Yeah, more of like a rebel, like
guerrilla
Speaking
warfare.
speaking of Star Wars, a rebelish, Viet Cong-ish type style
Right.
of war here. Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy it for a lot of those same reasons. So I'm glad that they came through and that you felt the same way. Again, Cillian Murphy is great. This depiction of war is great, and now they put these two brothers against each other is great. This half revolutionary that turns into a civil war could be really hard to execute. There's a lot to get done there. So I kind of, though the movie does ignore some parts of history and leaves you clueless, and you can go do the background research and put it onto the movie yourself. I like that. I like that it did that. It didn't waste too much time trying to make sure that we knew all of the politics at every moment.
Right. Whose party was what and all of that.
You can figure that stuff out. You can tell the good and the gray yourself here. So good. I'm glad you liked it, Rob.
Definitely. All right, Ray. Well, obviously, I loved Inherit the Wind That Shakes the Barley.
That was good. I wasn't sure, but good.
And so I want to inherit some more recommendations from you. What have you been watching, and what should I be checking out?
Watch some things that you should check out. You may already have checked out, and I watched some things that I know you won't check out. So it won't be for you. It'll be for the audience.
Oh, fair enough.
But I did watch season 2 of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Live action.
Live action.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, thank you. Pass. Hard pass.
Yeah,
Animated only.
It is tough because the animated show is like one of the best animated shows maybe ever. And I feel like this live action version is good, but if you've watched the cartoon, which I'm sure 90% of the base that's watching the live action show has watched the animated series, it doesn't live up to the animated, and it couldn't. It's just there's too few episodes.
There's no way.
Yeah. There's too few episodes. But like the thing about Avatar: The Last Airbender, it's a Nickelodeon show, but there's enough depth to it where like there is room for human like emotion and make it, it works in live action because it's a show that has so many layers and is so good, but it's just the Nickelodeon show did it so well. And there's some scenes like I was really looking forward to season 2 because like I don't remember if like Eero's episode, the uncle's episode, like Leaves from the Vine, when it's like this little 4-minute segment, but like usually the whole internet cries when they watch it. Like he's singing to his dead son. And the song is like always gets stuck in my head every time I hear it. And in the show, I was so looking forward to that scene. And then he didn't even sing it. He just kind of sat there and just like looked at the grave. And so I kind of feel like that's the show in a nutshell. It works, but it's just not like everything just doesn't quite live up.
Yeah.
I also watched, and this is what I know you'll hate even more than that, was another Avatar, but the blue ones, Avatar: Fire and Ash.
Oh my God, what are you doing?
I did that for the podcast, guys. I made sure I watched that for you. So I know the biggest complaint with Avatar: Fire and Ash was that it was exactly like that's your complaint. Everybody else's complaint was that it's exactly like Avatar Part 2, whatever that one was called, The Quest for More Water or something.
The Quest for More Water.
But that is, and that's pretty much true. Like the plot isn't exactly the same.
Yeah.
But like every character's motives are pretty much the same as what they were at the end of it throughout the second movie. Mm-hmm. And so it does make it feel really repetitive. Like the characters aren't really going anywhere. They're stuck in a circle that they can't get out of.
Yeah.
And it definitely makes it like less entertaining. There's definitely diminishing returns, and I've kind of heard James Cameron say he's not really sure like if the 4th or 5th are going to happen anytime soon, and I'm like, that's okay. Like think of some new ideas before you rush into probably spending like $3 billion to make an average movie.
Another $3 billion.
Some stuff that I have enjoyed. I finally finished on Amazon Spider Noir.
I did too.
With Nick Cage.
Oh my God.
And you're a Nick Cage fanatic. I am 50-50 on Nick Cage. And I really liked this show. I thought like for what it was going for, it nailed.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not like groundbreaking or anything to me, but I'm like, I thought they successfully delivered on exactly what they were going for. I found it entertaining. I'm glad I watched it. If they made a season 2, I'd watch that too.
Yeah, I like the way that they kind of took a character that, I mean, wasn't like a joke into the Spider Verse,
Yeah,
but it was,
comedic.
yeah, but it was, again, it was another version of Spider Man. That was the big thing. But it was like a movie about Miles Morales. But here's all these other people,
Yeah,
and they were able to take one of them and make a spin off show
Yeah.
essentially of it. And I think that was really cool. I kind of expanding on the world, and it's like a version you've never really seen
Right,
before.
yeah,
So
feels
that
different.
feels different, exactly. So it's kind of getting away with making another Spider-Man thing is by having it be so different. But having Nick Cage in it was just fantastic, and it was funny because I think he kind of kept it together, for the bulk of the
Yeah.
series. And in the last like 2 episodes, Nick Cage really started to come out, and it was
Yeah.
great. There were some scenes that I'm just like, there he is.
That's the guy.
That's
Yeah,
the guy.
it's really old timey, like
Yeah.
almost like old like baseball announcer, like there you go.
Yeah.
But and it's kind of funny though, but they actually built that into like the canon of the show because like he is kind of possessed by mutant spider, and
Sure.
he was he goes to old timey movies to learn how to speak again, to learn
Yeah.
cadence and stuff. So it's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, it actually like justifies this weird speech that you've kind of been hearing, like almost.
Right.
Like on purpose, but almost like B old movie type humor. But
Yeah.
like, oh, it actually made it all work even better.
Yeah, and I've seen some really funny quotes that are very, very Nick Cage, where in interviews he's talking about Spider Noir. He's kind of hoping that this is a gateway drug to Humphrey Bogart movies for younger
Sure.
people, getting them to go and watch that, which just again makes me think of The Unbearable Weight of Natural Talent, where he
Right.
keeps trying to get everybody to watch The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is a great movie, but it's just really funny.
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely recommend that to people. I have recommended that to people. And then the last thing I got to was Project Hail Mary.
Saw that too.
That dropped on Prime. I didn't go and see that in the theaters. Pretty well reviewed. And I have to say that I really enjoyed it. I thought it was super solid. Not like crazy different from The Martian. I really enjoyed The Martian, but I think I would say I like Project Hail Mary a bit more.
Okay.
I don't know if it was maybe because there was just a second person involved, and there's
Yeah.
a little bit more of that like that friendship building. I thought was really well done.
Yeah, turning it into a buddy comedy kind of helped.
Definitely, I think.
I think that and making you really fall in love with a crab rock.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which I thought rock lobster. Can I
Yeah.
call him a rock lobster?
Sure.
And that was, I think that was great. I think they were able to give him enough of a personality and humanize him, quote unquote, enough
Yeah.
that you were really able to buy into Rocky as a character.
Yeah.
And I think Ryan Gosling, who I am not a huge fan of, like I'm notoriously not a big fan of Ryan Gosling, but I do think he really kind of was able to create a performance in this movie that I would actually say is pretty darn good.
Yeah,
So,
I thought it was very funny. He was very funny for
Yeah.
some, maybe an actor can be a little stoic and stuff. I thought the action piece at the end, like where Rocky gets hurt and they're collecting like the bacteria to fight the Astral Fate, was
Yeah.
really, really good.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I know one criticism I hear comes from people that read the book, and it's just like the movie goes too fast, it's too complicated, and like the book, it takes, it's able to slow down.
Well, yeah. it's
and
a
I'm like,
book.
yeah, exactly. It's a median difference, but like I didn't find like the people are like people are going to be confused. It's too quick. It's too quick. I'm like, I didn't feel confused. Like I felt like I was always hanging on. Like it's movie science,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
but
I don't
always-
have to know every bit of it to
Yeah,
understand
just tell me
kind of
it
what
works.
you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was always kind of on board. Like I don't need to see like that it takes 5 months for them to actually speak each other's language. Like I get it. They built the device. It probably happened over a course of time. I get it. And so, that stuff didn't bother me. So the movie didn't bother me. I really liked it. But what else have you watched? We had a couple things in common there. Is there anything else you were checked out that I haven't seen yet?
I definitely have, and some stuff you should see. So I watched. I've been wanting to watch this for a while. Was Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die,
Oh,
which
yes.
is the new Gore Verbinski movie. His first movie in 9 years.
Really?
I know. It was crazy. 9 years. A Cure for Wellness, which for your old school Car Ray Rob fans on the YouTube show might remember we covered that trailer
Wow.
when it came out. So that was kind of fun. But yeah, so Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. Stars Sam Rockwell. It's the Sam Rockwell that you want. It's the best kind of Sam Rockwell. Like he's weird, he's crazy. It's great, and it's about a guy who comes back from the future to the past to try to he's coming back to this diner in L.A. and he's doing it over and over and over again to try to put together the right group of people, because in that night they can save the world in that night if he puts together the right team of people. And it's super fun and quirky and weird and very Gore Verbinski in that way. And but it's like I said, kind of a great sci-fi little romp on a Friday night popcorn movie. So I'd highly recommend that. Juno Temple
checks a lot of my boxes.
Yeah, and Zazie Beetz is in it. Juno Temple is in it. Michael Pena is in it. Like, it's got a pretty decent enough cast where there's some really fun side stuff that happens in the movie as well, and they actually take their time with each character.
Yeah.
For like an ensemble movie, they don't always do that.
Right.
With this, they definitely did. And I thought that was cool. Another thing I watched, and this is actually, it's a doc, but it's a music doc, so I don't know if you may or may
Those
not
could be
into
weird.
it. Yeah, they can be, but it's a movie called It's All Gonna Break, and it is about I don't know if you've ever heard of this band. It's the Canadian kind of indie pop band called Broken Social Scene.
Don't think so.
And it's a pretty great doc, because like a lot of the footage was actually recorded in the mid-aughts, like when they were kind of really like on the upswing, like when they were really kind of in obscurity, and then they kind of took off. And a friend of theirs was just like filming the whole time. And I guess he decided to put together this doc in like 2007. And he put it together, presented it to them. They kind of left him hanging for a long time. And then they basically were just like, no, like, don't release it. It's just not the right time. We don't know. So they shelved it. And nearly 20 years later, they came back to it and like recut some things towards the end, and maybe recut it a little bit too, as like throughout, and made it now.
Okay,
so
cool.
Like 20 years later. So it's pretty cool in that regard, because it's got new interviews and stuff like that with the band now, talking about then and all this stuff. So I think I can see where that kind of distance, like in time, would have been needed to kind of have to be able to look back on it instead of like, this is happening now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Sometimes it's having that hindsight, lets you create something a little bit more interesting.
Definitely.
Another thing I watched was Ready or Not 2. We are all a big Samara Weaving fans here.
Sure.
This is almost like the unofficial Samara Weaving fan club here at Car Ray Rob, considering we kicked off our podcast with the babysitter. But you never saw the first one, did you?
No.
So you should definitely watch the first one.
Did you talk about it on this show?
I probably have, but like, you should definitely watch the second one too. It's a lot of fun. They found I wasn't sure if they could find a sequel, but they did. Elijah Wood is in the cast this time around, which is great, and Samara is back, obviously, and it's a fun way. Now, I don't know. I do think there might be a third one now after this, and it could work. So like, that was one, like I said, for not knowing if they could find a sequel, I think they may have actually found a third movie, possibly. But I thought it was a lot of fun. Again, it's kind of like a fun Friday night, again, kind of popcorn movie. Let's see. I watched Lee Cronin's The Mummy, which was like, it's like kind of...
When did that come out?
It came out, I can't remember. I think it came out technically the end of last year or the beginning of this year.
Okay.
It said in 2026, so it's technically this year. And it came out in April. Oh, I thought it came out earlier than that. But it's not really like a Universal monster movie, kind of, but like, because I know they did the Tom Cruise Mummy like a while back.
Which mummy are we on right now?
No, and like, this is completely devoid of that. It's not. It's like kind of a reimagining of the Mummy franchise, because it's all about like a girl who goes missing while her family is in Egypt when she's young, and then they find her 8 years later in a sarcophagus, like mummified, but she's alive still, and it's pretty crazy. Like, they end up bringing her home, trying to reintegrate her into the family, and it just doesn't go well, as you can imagine. There's clearly something wrong with her, and kind of figuring that out, what happened to her, is kind of the whole deal. But it's pretty cool. I think they were able to put together some pretty decent scares. I thought the story, for again, a Universal monster that's been done and done and done and done, it's like, okay, how are you going to find something new? And I think they were able to somewhat kind of do that, maybe
Good.
Like, especially like trying to interject family trauma.
So
it
sounds a bit more interesting than what I would expect, just because we've just retread The Mummy so many times.
Exactly. But yeah, I would check that out. I watched the final season of The Bear, but I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to talk about it because of that. I will say, short answer is I think it ended fine. but I'm going to wait for you to watch it before we really dive.
Yeah,
into
I've
it.
had a hard time getting to it. Just like I just feel like it's
I know.
lost so much momentum.
I know, and this one's not going to. It's going to pick it back up, but is it going to make you feel like season 1? No. I will tell you that right now. Do not go in expecting that.
What about I'm not a huge fan of learning that it's all taking place in a day because I'm like, well, how much change can occur in a day?
I mean, you might be surprised.
Okay.
The first few episodes are a little slow in that regard because they are kind of taking their time, longer scenes, kind of building up and all of that. But like, it works. It does work. It pays off by the second half for sure. The biggest thing that I want to talk about, and this is maybe one of my favorite things that I've watched, is No Other Choice, which is the new Park Chan-wook film that came out. I think it came out at the end of last year, like in September of last year. And this movie is bonkers.
Really?
Like, I love Park Chan-wook, Old Boy, Joint Security Area.
Right.
Big fan. Big
love
fan of that here.
Joint Security Area.
Yeah, and so the great thing about this, about No Other Choice, is it actually stars Lee Byung-hun from Joint Security Area and The Good, the Bad, the Weird.
And the weird. Sweet.
So like, it's super cool. I will say this movie is so interesting because it is one of the maybe most perfect encapsulations of like modern relationships with capitalism that I've ever seen.
Really?
Because so it's about a guy who works for a paper company for like 25 years, and then he thinks he's got to like lay off a bunch of his coworkers. Because an American company has bought his company and they're going to like basically decrease production by like 20%.
Mm-hmm.
So he thinks he's going to have to lay off all of these people that he works with, and because he's like a manager. Well, it turns out he's the one who ends up getting laid off. And so he is like, it basically sends his whole life into like a tailspin. Like, what does he do? Like, he has a wife and 2 kids, and it gets to a point where like months go by, he still doesn't have another job, and he won't look for anything outside of paper, and because that's who he is. Like, paper is who he is.
It's Michael Scott.
Right, kind of. And so he kind of sets it up where he's going to try to get a job at this new like up and coming paper company that's like doing really well, but he knows there's going to be a lot of competition. So he starts a fake paper company, gets people to apply to his fake paper company, figuring out who the best candidates are. He picks the top 5 and then decides he's going to kill them because he knows that they're going to apply for this real job that he is also going to be going for. So it's a really interesting movie. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Like I said, Park Chan-wook is an absolute master, and I know you'll love it again because of the Joint Security Area connection and The Good, the Bad, the Weird. But he's one of the best directors I think anywhere in the world of the last 25 years, absolutely, and this just continues that trend.
All right, Rob. Well, let's wrap up this conversation. For the wind that shakes, the inherit the barley.
Inherit the wind that shakes the barley.
I promise you don't know what my movie is next month, but the word wind will not probably be in it.
No, are you sure?
Have you seen Gone with the Wind?
I have.
Okay, yes, then I'm sure.
So, Gone with the Inherit the Wind of the Barley.
Right. Let's move on.
Enough puns
Let's wrap
already.
this thing up. All right. Well, anyway, this movie was great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's a movie that deals with 2 sides of an argument, but there's only one side for what I'm about to say. No arguments allowed. You guys need to like and subscribe to this podcast if you have not done so. Leave us a 5-star review, because if you do, we're going to read it live on air someday, and that would be cool. Don't forget, you guys can email us at carrayrob@gmail.com and reach out to us on Blue Sky at carrayrob.
Absolutely. You can now follow us on both Facebook and Instagram. By all means, go and do that and find all the fun stuff we are doing over there. If there is a comment section on whatever platform you're on, by all means, let us know what you thought of Gone of the Inherited Wind of the Barley, or whatever this movie is called.
Just say you like this one.
Just say if you like this movie or not. I want to know what your favorite Cillian Murphy performance is, because there are a lot of good ones,
wow.
and I bet Everybody has their own personal favorite. We will be back next week with this month's Hello Movies, My Old Friend, where Ray and I are very excited to revisit the 1997.
This is the 30th anniversary, isn't it?
I think. Oh, that's right. You're right. So it's 1996.
Yeah. We have like perfect timing on this. It's weirdly perfect.
Weirdly perfect. But I'm so excited. The 1996 MTV classic. I'm going to use that word in this moment, but it might not hold. Joe's Apartment.
There's no way we're wrong here.
There's no way we're wrong. This movie's going to hold up. It's definitely a classic. You're going to want to make sure of that with us. We will be back in 2 weeks with my first episode of August of Say Hello to My Little Film, where I have got something I'm very excited to show Ray. It's a little outside the box for what I've been doing this year, but I think he might enjoy it.
What is it?
I'm not going to tell you.
Oh, yeah,
I'm not going to tell you. It's a secret. I mean, everybody got to keep that close to your chest. And then we will be back in 3 weeks with August's episode of A Copy of a Copy, where we are doing something we have never done before, where we are watching a original and a remake from the same director.
What? He remade his own movie?
He remade his own movie, and that is Alfred Hitchcock's 1934 classic, The Man Who Knew Too Much, starring Peter Lorre, and the 1956 The Man Who Knew Too Much, starring James Stewart and Doris Day.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
I haven't seen either of those. I'm excited to do it.
Yeah, I have seen the 56 version, but I have actually not seen the 34 version, and I am a Peter Lorre fan, so I'm excited to see that. But you are not going to want to miss it. But until then, this is Car Ray Rob.
Where I'm Ray.
And I'm Rob. And remember, be defined by the films you love, not the ones you hate.
Hey there, it'll be just a little while till Ray and Rob spit their spittle. Come on, check out of the hospital. So grab some of your best peanut brittle. This will be a darn good transmittal. And say hello to my little film.
All right, guys, before I let you go, I gotta give you a little sneak peek of what I am going to be presenting to Ray for our first episode of August of Say Hello to My Little Film. And I am very excited about this one because it's a little bit different than what I've been doing lately. And I'm just trying, but I'm not going to push Ray too much on this one, but I do think he may or may not like it. We will see. It is the 1998 neo-noir sci-fi film Dark City, directed by Alex Proyas of The Crow fame, starring Rufus Sewell, William Hurt, Kiefer Sutherland, Jennifer Connelly. It's, I think, a very underrated sci-fi film from the 90s, and I presented Gattaca to Ray for season 1, so I'm going back to that same kind of era, that same kind of feel. And I am also going to say some people actually accuse The Matrix of ripping off this movie because it came first. But I'm going to leave that for you to decide. If you have not seen Dark City, check it out, and we will see it in a couple of weeks, and we'll find out if Ray loves it as much as I do.